In the headlines, President Buhari in a farewell broadcast apologizes to Nigerians for painful Naira redesign policy. Explosion kills 2 in Kefi, Nasarawa State. Zamfara State's Governor Matawali, absent as deputy, hands over to Governor-elect Lawal Dare. And on the foreign scene, polls close in Turkey's historic presidential runoff. Hello and welcome to Trust TV News Updates. I am Martia Umar. Thank you for joining. Now the news in detail. The outgoing President Muhammadu Buhari has apologized to Nigerians for pain and suffering associated with the implementation of currency swap or cashless policy. The president, in his farewell broadcast as president, commander-in-chief of the armed forces, said it was meant to revamp the economy. The president called on all Nigerians to be more vigilant and support the security agencies by ensuring that values defined by being brothers keepers govern the people's actions.
My fellow Nigerian brothers, sisters, and friends of Nigeria, I address you today in my last assignment as a democratically elected president of our great and well-endowed nation, with a deep sense of gratitude to God, a great deal of appreciation to the Nigerian people, and a modest sense of fulfillment. Today, we mark and celebrate another peaceful transition of power from one elected government to another in our steady march to improve and sustain Nigeria's democracy. This year we witnessed the most keenly contested presidential elections since the First Republic, and this demonstrates that our democracy is getting better and more entrenched with each election. We must, as a nation, improve and sustain gains we made in the electoral process on an incremental basis for Nigeria to take its rightful place among nations. Our democracy provides for, allows, and encourages seeking redress for perceived injustices, enabling some candidates and political parties that do not agree with the results to go to court. Irrespective of the outcome of the various cases, I urge all parties involved to accept the decision of our courts and join hands to build a better Nigeria. I salute the doggedness and resilience of all the presidential candidates and their political parties for believing in our judicial system by taking their grievances with the election results to court. In the course of the campaigns, we had argued and disagreed on how to make Nigeria better, but we never disagreed or had any doubts that Nigeria has to be better. As your president, I call on all of us to bring to bear the strengths of our individualism, the power of our unity, the convictions of our beliefs, to make Nigeria work better and together with one spirit and one purpose.
And now to Nasarawa State, where an explosion suspected to be a bomb explosion killed 6 persons in the state, and the incident occurred in the early hours of Sunday morning opposite General Hospital in Kefi along the Nasarawa metropolis, and 2 female occupants of the rented apartment in the area are identified as victims. Some residents of the area said the victims knew and that they arrived Kefi on Saturday afternoon, but other accounts indicate that they were hiding from raid by operatives, Department of the state security before the explosion. An eyewitness told our reporters that the victims have noticed that the presence of DSS and realized that they had no option than to blow off themselves with an explosive or grenade. When contacted and phoned for comment, the public relations officer of the police, DSP Rahman Nansa, said he will get back to our reporter. The Kaduna State Governor Nasir El-Rufai said the incoming administration in the state is lucky to have a working document to work with on the first day in office. The governor stated this during a brief remark before handing over a copy of the report of the Transition Committee to the governor-elect Obasani at Council Chambers of Sir Hashim Ibrahim House in Kaduna. The report.
Ahead of the May 29 inauguration, Governor Nasir El-Rufai said the governor-elect Obasani can hit the ground running from day one. The governor said he was not fortunate to have such document when he assumed office in 2015.
First is to thank the Transition Committee for the hard work and dedication that enabled them to produce this report before the date of handover to the next administration. We were not so fortunate when we came in 2015 because briefings only started after we took office on the 29th of May 2015. Then our Transition Committee had all the materials and the documents to prepare a report.
The governor-elect Obasani commended members of the Transition Committee and promised to deliver on all his campaign promises.
I have no doubt in my mind they have done a very good job. I will try to study their recommendation, and by the grace of God we will try as much as possible to implement most of their recommendations. I can say here that I'm a very lucky person because I'm being given all the support by my boss, who have made sure that the people we put together are people that can really help my own administration.
The chairman of the Transition Committee, Balara Balawal, said members of the committee exhibited transparency in their assignment and engaged extensively in the area of agriculture, environment, natural resources, human capital, institutional development, and security. Bella Musa, Trust TV News, Kaduna.
The outgoing Zamfara State Governor Bello Matawalle has handed over the Transition Committee reports to Governor-elect Dauda Lawal. Speaking during the handing over of the documents at Government House, Gusau, Matawalle, who was represented by his Deputy Senator Hassan Nasiha, said that the documents were compiled by the Transition Committee set up to ensure smooth handing and taking over of government in the state. The report.
Governor Bello Matawalle, represented by his deputy, while handing over the Transition Committee report to the governor-elect, said the documents contained activities of the administration from year 2019 to year 2023, which will serve as guide to the incoming administration in the state. Governor Matawalle also seized the opportunity and called on the governor-elect to caution his supporters to be law-abiding and ensure peace during and after the inauguration ceremony on the 29th of May. He stressed the need for people to know that Zamfara State belongs to all, hoping that what happened during the governorship election results declaration will not repeat itself after the handover of government to the incoming administration.
This state is our state. Zamfara State is our state. We can never run away from it. No? Last time, a lot has happened. By the time when it was announced that you are the one that won the race, a lot of destructions has been made throughout the state, especially people affected. People that are not in other parts. Please, I would like to use this opportunity to please kindly plead to you and to other members of the other party to let them take this state as a brotherhood state. We are one, and we don't have any place to go but to stay in Zamfara State.
Responding, the governor-elect Dauda Lawal described the handing over as historic that remain indelible on his mind.
The current governor of Zamfara State is handing over the transition committee report to the incoming administration, alhamdulillah. I've heard clearly from the deputy governor about some of the few remarks he made. One, in terms of power being transcended. Alhamdulillah, it's a very good reminder for all of us. And I can assure you, I'm fully aware, and I'll do whatever it takes, inshallah, to keep reminding myself about this.
The Zamfara State Governor-elect Lawal also said his administration will study transition document, and if there are concern on issues, he will approach the outgoing administration for explanations.
Gombe State Governor Inua Yahya and Chairman Northern Governors Forum has dissolved his cabinet ahead of his swearing-in for second term. Governor Yahya announced the dissolution of the State Executive Council at the valedictory session of the State Council meeting. Ibrahim Ismail has more.
His Excellency, the Chairman of the Council.
This is the valedictory session of the Gombe State Executive Council, signaling the end of the first tenure of the Inua Yahya APC-led administration that began from 29 May 2019. Governor Yahya, who announced the dissolution of the cabinet, thanked the commissioners for their contributions in the last 4 years.
With what we did, I hereby announce that this cabinet dissolves as from today. This is the last working day. But as Mr. President said, you are still in government, you manage until we transit finally on the 29th. So don't be surprised. I work here Saturdays and Sundays. If I send for you, please, hurry up and come. There could be one or two things for you to explain or answer or advise on what we do.
The Attorney General of the state and Commissioner for Justice pointed that the APC-led government had inherited multiple problems when it came to power in 2019, but ensured it worked hard to surmount them.
Your Excellency, you have faced these daunting challenges squarely, and they've been addressed successfully. And for that, the people of Gombe are grateful. And for those of us who are in the train that has moved this Gombe forward, we thank you for giving us the opportunity to put our footprints in the history of Gombe. Your work that you have done outlived those who have done for 16 years, and you will continue to be remembered for that. I don't need to mention them. But particularly, I cannot fail to mention the Muhammadu Buhari Industrial Park. The cumulative effect of that will be seen in the future. And whether you are alive or not, people will continue to say it was His Excellency Muhammadu Inua Yahya that constructed this. Thank you for that.
The governor has inaugurated a transition committee in preparation for his swearing-in for the second term, come 29 May 2023. Ibrahim Ismail, Trust TV News, Gombe.
Still on handing over matters, the outgoing governor of Kano State, Abdullahi Umar Ganduje, is set to perform the official handing over of the state's affairs to Governor-elect Abba Kabir Yusuf on Sunday, May 28. The ceremony will take place at 9 p.m. at the Government House in Kano. This was announced in a statement by the Commissioner for Information and Internal Affairs, Maila Muhammad Garba. According to the statement, the Kano State Government Transition Committee has already communicated the event to the Transition Committee of the Governor-elect. The two committees have met during the week to work out a harmonized agenda for the handing over ceremony, including the presentation of handing over document to the Governor-elect's committee. Following the handover, Governor Ganduje will depart for Abuja as the head of the Kano delegation attending the inauguration of President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu on Monday, May 29. The urgency of the departure is to meet the deadline for the closure of the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja, which will be closed for the inauguration ceremony. Malan Garba urged the people of Kano to continue praying for peace and development in the state, and the official handing over ceremony and the Governor Ganduje's subsequent departure for the president-elect's inauguration signify a significant moment in Kano State's political landscape. It symbolizes a peaceful transfer of power and highlights the importance of unity and development for the state's future. The federal government at the weekend released a foreign large crude carrier VLCC MT Heroic Edo, arrested by the Nigerian Navy for violating the Nigerian maritime law. And the vessel was arrested by the man of the Nigerian Navy in August 2022 for grave infractions of the maritime laws and subsequently prosecuted by the federal government at the Federal High Court in Port Harcourt in January this year. Speaking to journalists shortly after releasing the vessel, Navy Captain Muhammad Adamu, the commanding officer, Navy Operating Base, Bonny, Rivers State, said having fulfilled all the conditions of the plea bargain to the satisfaction of the Federal High Court, the large crude carrier has been released to its owners, Edo Maritime, with the consent of the court and approval of the federal government of Nigeria. Navy Captain Muhammad Adamu noted that the general public and the maritime world were notified of the grave infractions of motor tanker Heroic Edo and her prosecution by the federal government of Nigeria at the Federal High Court, Port Harcourt, on the 10th of January 2023. Navy Captain Muhammad stated that it was equally disclosed that the very large crude carrier VLCC Heroic Edo and her 26 foreign crew pleaded guilty and elected voluntarily to enter into a plea bargain agreement with the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as well as make restitution to the federal government. You're watching the news update on Trust TV. Coming up shortly, we'll take a look at the effect on physical libraries of the modern era. Details of this story and more after the break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. This is the news update on Trust TV. A recap of our top stories. We told you earlier that President Muhammadu Buhari, in a farewell broadcast, apologizes to Nigerians for painful Naira redesign policy. And explosion kills 2 in Kefi Nasarawa State. And moving on, the House of Representatives has amended the Central Bank of Nigeria Act to raise the lending limit of the Apex Bank to the federal government from 5 to 15%. The amendment was done at an emergency session held by the lawmakers on Sunday. It comes amid concerns from the public regarding why the National Assembly would approve the Ways and Means Advances request of President Muhammadu Buhari, considering that the 23.1 trillion naira request was many times over the 5% lending limit of the CBN. The passage of the bill by the House comes 24 hours after the Senate passed the same bill in a similar emergency session. Just like the Senate did, the House also amended the 2023 supplementary budget to allow for its implementation till 31st December 2023. Now, most traditional libraries have received little or no attention in recent times, as majority of students and researchers now rely on internet for books and other forms of information. But despite the rise in internet-based sources, physical libraries still remain relevant, as some of the information on the internet might not be absolutely accurate, correct, or reliable, while others are completely unavailable. Hamid Oyegbade reports that this is why students are calling for an overhaul of physical libraries. The report.
Until recently, students and researchers dedicated substantial part of their time to visit libraries, to consult, read, and even borrow books. But with the advent of technology, most people now depend on the internet to get the needed information in their fields of study. This has caused public libraries to suffer neglect, and many of them near moribund, especially owing to paucity of funds.
Most of the libraries that I've gone to, they don't usually have books that are up to par or up to date. Most of the time, their latest editions are usually 2009, 2010.
The technological age comes with innovations, such as online resources, online libraries, that is practically taking over the traditional world of library.
Because students basically they use the internet more often. So if the materials that are needed that are in the traditional library are also provided to the internet library, then it can be more easier for students and every researcher to make their research online with the internet rather than going to the traditional library.
Notwithstanding the online books, the traditional libraries are still very relevant, as some of the information on the internet might not be absolutely accurate, correct, and reliable.
In most cases, there are some materials in library that are of essential use. So this link between traditional library and electronic library is still very there, because there's still a nexus or a sort of an interrelationship. For example, there is a case, we have something like a interlibrary loan. Then we have a case of a selective dissemination of information. Yes, information could be sourced online, and it is the librarians in the physical library who will work on that information query. Without the traditional library, even the online, the electronic library will not be a reality.
The students charge government to totally overhaul public libraries to meet the modern-day demands of library users. Hamid Oyegbade, Trust TV News, Osogbo.
The Nursing and Midwifery Council of Nigeria said it has developed a strategy to produce 30,000 nurses by the end of this year. The registrar of the council, Farouk Umar Abubakar, made this known in Abuja during the official commissioning of the new permanent headquarters office complex of the council. He said it will help close the shortage gap from the brain drain and ensure quality service delivery. He said the council also targets producing 50,000 nurses and midwives by the end of 2025. The registrar said that the new office complex will shore up accommodation and the work of the council, adding that it has 47 office spaces, a 3 suspended floor office building with a basement floor that has offices, 2 storage rooms, 1 archive and offices, among others. Commissioning the edifice, Minister of Health, Dr. Sagi Hanire, commended the registrar and governing council for the judicious utilization of the public funds, noting that the council had recorded unparalleled milestones in all aspects of the mandate, including developing a new strategic plan from 2023 to 2027, and the setting of full computer-based professional examination is one of the things he applauded. The national president of the National Association of Nigerian Nurses and Midwives, Comrade Michael Ekumanachi, called for an enhanced salary structure specific to nurses in the country. And now on the international scene, voting closed in Turkey's presidential runoff with President Recep Tayyip Erdogan fighting for a historic third term. Erdogan is going head-to-head with opposition leader Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, a 74-year-old bureaucrat and leader of the left-leaning CHP. In the first round of the voting on May 14, Erdogan secured a nearly 5-point lead over his opponent, but fell short of the 50% threshold needed to win. The president parliamentary bloc won a majority of seats in the parliamentary race on the same day. Erdogan cast his vote at a voting center in Istanbul on Sunday, and Kılıçdaroğlu cast his vote in Ankara. Electoral authorities said voting was passing without any issues and that result should come sooner than in the first round. Last week, a third-place candidate, Sinan Ogan, who won 5% of the first-round vote, publicly endorsed Erdogan, further boosting the strongman's leader's chances of winning Sunday's second and final presidential round. And in sport, Paris Saint-Germain goalkeeper Sergio Rico is in a serious condition in intensive care after a horse riding accident. Rico, was 29 years old, was riding in El Regio region of Huelva in Spain when he was in a collision with a runway horse and fell. The Spaniard was flown by helicopter to a hospital in Seville. Rico was on the bench as PSG won a record 11th league title with a 1-1 draw at Strasbourg on Saturday. He had returned to his native Spain after the squad were given the off following their win. The former Sevilla keeper joined the French champions in 2020 and spent the 2018-2019 season on loan at Premier League side Fulham. He has made 29 appearances for PSG since moving from Sevilla in September 2019. And that brings us to the end of the news update at this hour. For more, follow us across all our social media platforms. I am Martia Umar. Thank you for watching. Enjoy the rest of your day.